It's now time to focus on to our opening address by our esteemed guest of honor. Ladies and gentlemen, he comes with more than 25 years of experience in the cybersecurity field with large enterprises and critical infrastructures. He leads cybersecurity across large MNCs, besides being an advisor at Cybersecurity Group for ISACA Singapore chapter and chairing the executive committee of OT ISAC. He is also the member of Growth Innovation Leadership Council at Frost & Sullivan. Our thought leader has several accolades in his name, some of the most prominent ones being recognized as #1 CSO in IDG's CSO 30 ASEAN Awards 2021 and winner in the ISACA Outstanding Chapter Leader Achievement Awards 2022. And today we are in for a real treat as our speaker delves into one of the most critical topics in our digital age, optimizing cyber risk in the cloud-first era. His insights will be invaluable in fortifying our digital landscapes and ensuring a secure and seamless cloud experience. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, let's open our minds and absorb the wisdom that is about to unfold as I now invite on stage our guest of honor. With a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome the one and only Mr. Stephen Sim Kong Leong, Global CISO and Head Group Cybersecurity Department. Can we have a big round of applause, everyone?
Thank you. First of all, I would like to congratulate Nilandri and his team for successfully launching the DevSecOps Summit. So I'm indeed very honored to be here alongside the esteemed speakers at this conference, right? And looking forward to sharing and learning from every one of you as well. So this topic about optimizing cyber risk in the cloud-first era, it could not have come at a better time. Or some of you may say a worse time, right? Depending on how you looked at it, with regards to what has happened over the recent few weeks, the news that you have heard, and so forth. So what I'm going to do is to share with you my thoughts about how we can optimize cyber risk as we are aware in this cloud-first era. So as I was walking down over here, I saw there was a Zoom session over there, and it's talk about frictionless business with using the cloud itself. So that is inevitable, and that using a cloud-first strategy has indeed helped a lot of us during the pandemic. So it's something that has a lot of strong business proposition, but we need to consider the risks as well, right? So I was told that each of us speakers, we are supposed to give away one book from the booths that you see over the other side. So I've taken one of these books called Realized Enterprise Architecture with AWS and SAFE. So I saw the word SAFE, I thought it should be relating to cybersecurity, the SAFE architecture, a bit like the Cisco SAFE, I presume, I may be wrong. So I intend to give that away, right? So what do you think I was trying to convey with this slide? So I'll be the first person on stage to give away a book. You do not need to wait until 5:30. Do you know who these characters are? Anyone? Anyone can just throw the answer and then this book is yours? Huh? What? Sorry again? Tekken. Okay. Yes, what is the theme of this Japanese anime? Okay, I'll give you a clue. This is relating to an arcade game that you play. It ends up as a story plot as well. Sorry? Yes, correct. This book is yours. Later on, we'll pass this book to you. Right. So DOA stands for DevOps Asia. It can also stand for Dead or Alive, right? Which is indeed a popular game. I think some of you have played. Probably it's out of fashion already. And it has an interesting story plot. So why am I going into this Dead or Alive? Right. Cybersecurity can be a matter of life and death. Dead or alive. Hospitals are moving to the cloud. Some setting up private clouds. Some are turning to the cloud for data analytics, right? And putting in personal and private information. So the attack surface, while there are a lot of value proposition for the cloud, being more agile, elastic, no concerns with manpower issues and so forth, but the attack surface have increased correspondingly, correct? And it is not just hospitals. Cyber attacks can hit any sector, right? And as we digitally transform, more IoT systems are connected to the cloud, and so are operational technology and industrial Internet of Things systems. They are very critical to the entire ecosystem. Another movie. So I'm sure many of you have heard about this movie because it's won accolades and awards. Right? We have truly reached an era where everything is a buzzword. Double quote, everything, right? We heard of everything 4.0, industry 4.0, supply chain 4.0, finance 4.0, Internet of everything, Internet of things, Internet of threads, Internet of containers, right? Everything as a service. Besides the usual infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, we also hear about MFT as a service, disaster recovery as a service, desktop as a service, right? It goes to show how prevalent cloud is, right? Not least, we have also heard of infra as code, policy as code, resilience as code, and much, much more. So it seems like we are entering a very confusing multiverse as we operate in it. But instead of the multiverse coming closer to reality, we have multi-cloud in the digital world. I'm sure many of you have deployed multiple different types of clouds in your environment, and for various reasons. Some of them could be due to data sovereignty reasons, right? GDPR, in the European side, you may not want to spill over the risk by having a platform that is worldwide. You may want to contain it within the European region and another in the various other regions. And with that, also multi-cloud has brought about increased attack surface and gives rise pretty much to the dilemma of should you have a lot of different native cloud deployments, which gives rise to a larger attack surface inevitably, or should you have a single one, but yet that also gives rise to more concentration risk. So a balance has to be struck. And the unfortunate thing is that different cloud providers, they use pretty much proprietary operating standards and procedures and protocols, which makes multi-cloud difficult to manage in this day and age. Now, what can possibly go wrong, right? I'm sure many of you would have heard the news splattered over the last few weeks. Yeah. This is all public domain knowledge. It's about the MOVEit supply chain breach, right? But without going into that first, let's look at what is on their website. It says, best-in-class security and reliability of 99.9% uptime. I hope there are no MOVEit folks over here. But I'm stating whatever that is factual over here. So it says best-in-class cloud deployment, stay current on the latest security updates and layers of defense, including FIPS 140-2 certified cryptography, access control, integrity checking, penetration testing, and more. Sounds like they have a lot of security processes already put in place, right? You can have granular control of managed file transfer services through folder, file, and user, single sign-on capability through SIMO, integration with identity provider systems. Managed and secured. So what can go wrong, right, with this? Customers have ended up with disrupted services, compromised data, sensitive to the company, and have to scour for indicators of compromise which in cybersecurity terms is about those signatures of breaches in their cloud instance. And we have gone to cloud. Many of us have gone to cloud with the notion that cloud is more secure, right? You say on-prem, you need to manage your vulnerabilities, you need to put in resources, whereas you outsource that responsibility to your cloud provider now, right? But many cases have proven us wrong, right? The cloud is equally vulnerable, and you need to put in the right risk mitigation and optimization, regardless of whether it's on-premise or on cloud. Right. In this incident, at last count, just a couple of days back, they were saying more than 455 organizations were breached. And much like the SolarWinds case, we are not seeing the tail end of reported breaches here yet. So over the next couple of weeks, we are going to see more and more being released by cloud ransomware gang. Right? As reported by Forbes last year, there is a seismic shift in the cloud threat landscape. And they have been proven right. As they increasingly target large critical vulnerabilities, zero-day vulnerabilities, new vulnerabilities that organizations could not fix in time. For economies of scale, because many customers rely on them, and hybrid cloud security breaches are expected to surge. So, with this, it sets the stage to some of the questions we need to think about. Questions that I feel we need to ask ourselves. Have we considered a risk-based or risk optimization approach to our cloud-first journey? Do we go on cloud for the sake of going on it, or have we gone up on it with proper mitigations in place? During the pandemic itself, we have heard about some organizations rush to adopt cloud adoptions without managing the risk. As a result, they end up being breached. Yeah. So it's important to have that risk governance put in place. The other question we should ask ourselves is whether we have blind spots in the hybrid multi-cloud environment. Do we know our assets that are on the cloud? Have we considered SBOMs or the software bill of materials on the cloud? Do you know whether your cloud provider is using MOVEit? Right. What is your multi-cloud cybersecurity strategy? Do you consider involving them in tabletop exercises? Do you have incident response plans in place to draw the breach when an incident happens, to switch to another cloud provider, and also be able to sustain your business when the cloud provider gets disrupted? In an example, a lot of us in a cloud environment, we use multi-factor authentication. So who is your identity provider? If your identity provider goes down, are you still able to access your system? Because it can potentially become a single point of security failure. Right. So these are some of the questions that we need to brood over. And my thoughts are that there are a few strategies that we can consider. First and foremost, security by design, default, and deployment. This is truly shifting left, right? And it's not a new concept. It has been around since at least 20 years ago. And recently, there has been increased focus on security by design. And not too long ago, by default as well. And of course, deployment becomes important. And that applies to DevOps. DevOps allow us the agility in our development work, reduces friction between the development teams and the operations team. But we need to embed cybersecurity into every single part of that, right? To build secure code on secure environments right from the start. So SRE, or Site Reliability Engineering, is an important aspect of this entire development environment, right? Because it allows rapid deployment of bug fixes and allows us to automate the manual work, increase the reliability of the infrastructure setup. And we need to consider the security aspects in this as well to ensure that service level objectives are achieved, right? At every step of the DevOps tool chain, security considerations must be put in place. And if you notice on the right part of this figure 8, there is threat intelligence, monitor, detect, respond, and recover. So while we shift left, we say security by design. It doesn't mean that you'll be secure 100%, right? For the code, there will always be new vulnerabilities being identified. You are just mitigating down the risk from the start before it snowballs into a bigger problem later on. So you need to also consider the inevitability of breaches. Right? And that means you need to ingest threat intel, to monitor, threat hunt, to detect, respond, and recover. I believe you later on hear from Gartner as well, and I always refer sometimes to the Gartner Hype Curve report. They have this very nice chart. I call it a C alphabet soup. A C, obviously, because it either stands for cyber or stands for cloud, the number C, right? The letter C in front. There's a whole slew of platforms that you need to look at: posture management, attack surface management, workload protection, native app protection, access security, brokerage, and so forth. And there are overlapping areas. It's really important to choose the ones that can provide holistic cybersecurity. Based on your threat modeling, I go back to risk assessment and treatment to meet your organization's risk appetite. You cannot do every single thing, right? It's important for you and me to understand the architecture, right? And be able to adapt it accordingly. And when it comes to architecting the cloud itself, I always felt that a zero trust approach is important. I mean, zero trust has helped us during the pandemic, allowed flexible computing options from anytime, anywhere access, reduces friction in many areas. And it comprises 3 key principles, right? Verifying your identities, data, infrastructure, network, data, and code, and so forth. And you're relying on the use of least privilege access, besides the authentication that you put in place. But I feel what hasn't been broached enough is the third piece, which is assume breach. Assume breach is actually a key part of the zero trust principle because you should not even trust your own network. And you must assume that your network is breached. You assume that any one of your cloud instances is already breached. And that means, that translates to putting in place solutions to limit the attack blast radius. Should a system get compromised, you limit the attack surface, you limit how it will be able to spread laterally, reducing the exposure and disrupting the hacker before crown jewels can be compromised in the cyber Q chain itself. The way of the UDA. UDA stands for Observe-Oriented Design Act. It's a process flow that is commonly utilized in non-cyber areas in terms of emergency response and so forth. It is also used as part of active cyber defense, right? As I shared earlier, in terms of assume breach, when you look at assume breach, you use active cyber defense to deploy that principle and put in place and operationalize that. And what that means, you need to ingest accurate threat intelligence, whether it's external or internal threat intelligence, and use that threat intelligence to perform your behavioral analytics, your monitoring of your assets, your user entity behavior analytics, your network behavior analytics, your threat hunting, right? You hunt for the threats behaviorally. In this day and age, the attacks are becoming increasingly sophisticated. Attackers are using living off-the-land products. 20 years ago, it was only firewalls and antivirus. Those are very much signature-based, right? You have blacklists. Of course, you have some whitelists at the firewall. But attackers have evolved. Every indicator of compromise, every signature that they have targeted an organization can be different. So blocking indicators of compromise is no longer something that is effective. We need to look at the tactics of the attackers, because they are what we call living off the land, LOL, right? Not laugh out loud, but living off the land kind of attacks, where they use administrative commands like PowerShells, like PS exec scripts, right? Which the antivirus is not going to block off your PowerShell. So this kind of threat intelligence is important in terms of the tactics and techniques to be able to hunt for attacks accurately and reduce false positives. So there was one instance, at least one instance I saw, FBI, they sent a list of indicators of compromise. And thankfully we checked through and realized that some of them relates to the PowerShell utility. And so we do have systems that require PowerShell to work. So if you blindly ingest the IO indicators of compromise, you would be blocking off some of your administrative scripts in the end from running, right? So it's important to threat hunt, and once you have identified an incident, to follow through the incident response process. Ultimately, the aim of active cyber defense is to detect fast, contain fast, and recover fast. Right? Because by detecting fast and containing fast, you prevent lateral movement into your crown jewels. And in my view, you should also consider the deployment of honey tokens beyond just honeypots and honey nets. Honey tokens, to me, is important, and I feel that not enough people have done that. Right? So you hear of a lot of credential leakages out there, database leakages, but whenever there's a leak, how do you know whether it originated from your organization or is originating from databases that the hacker has collated from various sources? Like you go to a COMEX show, you sign for the lucky draw and put in your corporate email address and so forth. How do you know it's coming from your database? So by deploying honey tokens, time-based honey tokens, you can actually tell when there's a leak that the breach uniquely originates from your specific system, and you know when it happened, so that you know which backup you can recover from. A lot of times, one of the key issues with cyber incident response is the inability to identify which is the version of backup you need to restore, which is clean. So I remember the recent Port of Nagoya incident. It took them a longer time to recover because they could not identify. They need time to identify which is the backup that doesn't have the malware inside, right? And it goes back into threat and environment manipulation in this process to fine-tune your architecture and the way you ingest your threat intelligence and so forth. Why is reliable threat intelligence important? So garbage in, garbage out. You don't want false flags, false negatives. So this is an illustration of what happened, and you can apply that to the cyber world. Right? This was from the Straits Times. US Air Force may have shot down Hobby Club's balloon worth $12 with a 439,000 missile. Wrong prioritization. If you have accurate threat intel, this would not have happened. In this respect, among all the information sharing analysis centers, OT, ISAC, which stands for Operational Technology Information Sharing Analysis, Cybersecurity Information Sharing Analysis Center. It is the second key thrust of the first Singapore OT Security Master Plan, right? Similar to many ISACs, it was set up to foster trust, collaboration, and community discussions. End users and vendors included to provide cross-pollination of ideas, sharing of best practices, and have a safe harbor environment to share threat intelligence. Because we always hear the rhetoric of hackers sharing among themselves. They have a community, they have ransomware as a service, they share tools and APIs. What about defenders? We are worried about sharing because as Asians, and as with most folks, we don't want to wash our dirty linen in public, right? So ISACs actually provide a safe harbor because whatever you share is anonymous, it will not be attributed back to you. If you have an incident, you share the indicators of compromise, you share the tactics, techniques, and procedures, people wouldn't know that it's from you. So OTISAC has more than 100 users on its platform, and I've personally benefited from a couple of such early warnings that was shared through the member shares of IOCs and indicators of compromise and TTPs. And as we move into everything 4.0, such threat intelligence will help us flip the asymmetry of attacks. What we mean by that is we have to, it's like a fence. If the hacker finds a hole in the fence, you have to scour the entire fence to find that hole. Whereas the hacker just needs to find one hole to penetrate through. So there is the imbalance of fairness over there. By sharing threat intelligence, we can render such tactics ineffective very quickly. So every time the hacker comes up with a new tactic, we share, early warn each other, render it ineffective, and they have to take the trouble to create another new one again, right? So that allows us to better protect ourselves as a community through collective intelligence and defense. And OTISAC facilitates that through these 4 areas: alert and analysis, communication technology, leadership and networking, and support and engagement. Here is just one of the examples. We use something called a traffic light protocol that tells us whether these are the advisories you can share within the community or internally only within the organization, right? Or externally with the entire community. So this is one of the TLP clear advisories, which talks about critical cross-site scripting bugs in Microsoft Azure cloud services, which allow arbitrary script injection. So the advisory provides actionable threat intelligence in terms of how you can better protect yourself against such bugs. What you should put into your WAF to be able to block, even if you don't have the patches put in place. So recapping the 3 key strategies that I shared earlier to optimize risk for cloud. First and foremost, of course, is having that proper risk governance put in place. You want to classify your assets, whether it's critical, mission critical, whether it's sensitive. You want to perform a threat modeling, proper threat modeling, and then perform a business impact assessment, system impact assessment. These are all what you can find in all the literature that is out there. And perform the duty in terms of the risk governance. I would say overlay that with these 3 strategies. Number 1, SD3. Secure by design, default, and deployment with DevSecOps and site reliability engineering. Secondly, zero trust principles. Limit the attack surface, right? And have that assume breach mindset, right? And last but not least, architect active cyber defense, collective intelligence, and defense, and that will help us sustain cyber resilience for the cloud. So we are relying on cloud to enable go green sustainability as well, right? So because we concentrate all the use of electrical power and optimize the kind of workloads, but we should sustain cyber resilience for our cloud deployment to align with business requirements. So recapping the very first picture that I shared, and thanks to the audience who managed to guess it correctly, I was thinking I couldn't give away the book already. So, recapping that picture, from DOA, they are alive, right? To collective cyber defense. In fact, that was how the DOA storyline went. If you watch the movie, initially, rivals work against one another. You kill me or I kill you, right? Subsequently, they started working together to overthrow adversaries. So, in Singapore itself, we have, or at least I myself have been truly thankful for the vibrant cybersecurity ecosystem guided by CSA, the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore, which facilitated the forming of this Singapore Cybersecurity Inter-Association, SCSIA for short. So we have local communities like SCS, Singapore Computer Society, AISP, Association of Information Security Professionals, SGTech, LawSoc, and of course, we also have chapters of global communities like Cloud Security Alliance, ISACA, OTISEC, IC Square, Garon is here. If you want to find out more of IC Square, and CSCIS. And we become the bridge to the global communities itself. So to this end, I really look forward to hearing and learning from the rest of the esteemed speakers and come together as a collective force to sustain cyber resilience in the long run. And I hope that my presentation has sort of set a stage for a deep dive into subsequent presentations, and I look forward to learning from them. And finally, if you wish to find out more about OTISEC, you can visit us on our website. Do connect. I look forward to hearing your views. After all, we are only as strong as our own ecosystem. Thank you, and I wish you a great conference.